These words echoed in Marcus Washington's mind as his private car glided through downtown, the city's skyscrapers reflecting the morning sun like beacons of possibility. At 42, Marcus had climbed the heights few had predicted for the boy from Southside Chicago, who once coded websites from a studio apartment he could barely afford. Today marked the culmination of a journey that began 20 years ago in his college dorm room. Frontier Technologies, the company he had built from nothing, was about to sign a $2.8 billion acquisition deal with Pinnacle Industries, one of the oldest and most prestigious corporations in America. The merger would not only cement his legacy, but would open doors for the diverse team of innovators he'd assembled over the years. 10 minutes until we reached the Grand Royal Hotel, Mr. Washington, his driver announced through the intercom. Marcus nodded, adjusting his custom-tailored navy suit. He glanced at the presentation tablet on his lap, scrolling through the final contract points one last time. Everything was in order. The numbers made sense. The vision aligned. The future looked promising. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Remember who you are and where you came from. So proud of you, baby." A smile tugged at his lips. Margaret Washington had raised him alone after his father passed when Marcus was just 11. She had worked double shifts as a nurse to put him through college, believing in his potential even when others didn't see it. Her unwavering faith had been his North Star. "Almost there, Mr. Washington," the driver announced. Marcus took a deep breath, centering himself. This wasn't just a business transaction. It was a statement. As one of the few black CEOs in the tech industry, he understood the weight of representation. Each success opened doors for others who looked like him. Each milestone challenged receptions and shattered glass ceilings. The car pulled up to the gleaming entrance of the Grand Royal Hotel, an architectural masterpiece of glass and steel that housed the most exclusive conference facilities in the city. This was where deals that shaped industries were made, where power brokers exchanged handshakes worth billions. As the door opened and Marcus stepped out, he straightened his shoulders, feeling the responsibility and anticipation of the moment. The Grand Royal Hotel stood before him like a modern-day castle, and today, he wasn't coming as a guest, he was coming as a king in his own right, ready to claim his place at the table. What Marcus didn't know was that the next few hours would test not just his business acumen, but the very principles that had guided his rise to the top. The Grand Royal Hotel lobby was a testament to opulence marble floors that reflected like mirrors, crystal chandeliers that cast prismatic light across the vast space, and staff dressed in impeccable uniforms moving with practiced precision. The air carried the subtle scent of fresh flowers and fine leather, the universal fragrance of wealth and exclusivity. Marcus approached the reception desk, his presence commanding yet unassuming. He'd learned long ago that true power didn't need to announce itself loudly. It resided in quiet confidence and measured words. "Good morning," he greeted the receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a practiced smile. "I'm checking in for the Pinnacle Frontier meeting. The Washington suite should be ready." Her smile flickered momentarily, an almost imperceptible pause as her eyes traveled over him, assessing. "Do you have a reservation confirmation, sir?" Marcus nodded, pulling out his phone to access the email. It should be under Washington or possibly Frontier Technologies. The receptionist tapped at her keyboard, her expression neutral, but her eyes occasionally darting to her colleague beside her, exchanging glances that Marcus had seen too many times before. He ignored them, maintaining his professional demeanor. "Ah, yes. The Washington suite," she finally said, her tone shifting slightly. "It appears the reservation was made by a Pinnacle Industries? Are you with their team?" "I'm Marcus Washington, CEO of Frontier Technologies," he clarified smoothly. "We're finalizing a merger with Pinnacle today." Recognition didn't immediately dawn in her eyes, but she nodded all the same. "Of course, sir. We'll need a credit card for incidentals." Marcus reached into his inner suit pocket and produced a sleek black metal card, his exclusive black card, reserved for high-net-worth individuals. He placed it on the counter, without fanfare. The receptionist picked it up, turning it over in her hand with visible skepticism. She glanced at her colleague again, who raised an eyebrow. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, his voice calm but firm. "No problem." she replied, though her tone suggested otherwise. It's just we don't see these very often. I'll need to check with my manager for approval. Marcus checked his watch. He had arrived an hour early precisely to avoid any complications before the meeting. That's fine, he said, though it wasn't. While waiting, he observed the lobby. A group of executives, all white, all male, were being checked in at the adjacent counter with effusive welcomes. No questions asked about their cards or reservations. They were ushered toward the elevator with promises of complimentary champagne and a personal tour of the executive floor. The manager appeared, a tall man with graying temples and a demeanor that suggested he considered himself the gatekeeper of this exclusive domain. He took the card from the receptionist, examined it with exaggerated scrutiny, then looked at Marcus. "Sir, can I ask where you obtained this card?" he inquired, his tone just shy of accusatory. Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. It was Elijah Davis, his CFO and friend since their days at MIT. "Marcus, I'm 10 minutes out. How's the hotel?" "Still working on check-in," Marcus replied, his eyes locked with the manager's. "There seems to be some confusion about my card." Elijah sighed audibly through the phone. "Again? Do they need me to vouch for you, or should I call Richard from Pinnacle to straighten this out?" "Let's give them a few more minutes to sort it out," Marcus said, his patience intact but wearing thin. "I'll see you soon." He ended the call and returned his attention to the manager, who now wore a slightly less confident expression. "My CFO will be joining shortly, and then our partners from Pinnacle Industries. We have the Preston Ballroom booked from noon for the contract signing. I'd appreciate if we could expedite this process." The manager nodded stiffly. "Of course, Mr. Washington. Let me process this right away." As the manager worked, Marcus couldn't help but wonder if the path to the top would ever truly be smooth for someone with his background. Even dressed in a suit that cost more than some cars, with a company valuation in the billions, he still faced these small indignities, these moments of doubt and questioning that his white counterparts rarely encountered. The irony wasn't lost on him that the very hotel where he was about to make history, with one of the largest tech acquisitions of the year, was also the place where his legitimacy was being questioned. Little did anyone in that opulent lobby know that the next few minutes would alter the course of not just Marcus's day, but the destiny of two major corporations and countless employees who depended on them. The manager returned Marcus's black card with a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything seems to be in order, Mr. Washington. Tyler here will assist you with your luggage and show you to your suite." Marcus nodded, maintaining his composure. "Thank you. My assistant will be arriving shortly with my bags. I'd like to check out the Preston Ballroom first to ensure everything is set up correctly for our meeting." A flicker of doubt crossed the manager's face. "The Preston Ballroom? That's our premier event space. It's reserved today for a major corporate event." "Yes," Marcus confirmed patiently. "The Frontier Pinnacle merger signing. My event." The manager glanced down at his tablet, scrolling through information. "I see a booking for Pinnacle Industries, but there's no mention of, what was it? Frontier." Marcus felt a familiar tension building at the base of his neck. "Frontier Technologies. We're the company being acquired by Pinnacle. I'm the CEO, Marcus Washington." "Of course, sir," the manager replied, though his tone suggested anything but certainty. "Let me check with our events coordinator. In the meantime, perhaps you'd like to wait in the lobby lounge? Tyler can bring you a complimentary beverage." Before Marcus could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A group of executives in tailored suits entered, led by a silver-haired man with commanding presence, Richard Harrington, CEO of Pinnacle Industries and soon-to-be chairman of the merged entity. The hotel staff snapped to attention, the manager quickly abandoning Marcus to greet the new arrivals with effusive warmth. "Mr. Harrington, welcome back to the Grand Royal. Everything is prepared for your important day." Richard shook the manager's hand firmly. "Thank you, James. Has Marcus Washington arrived yet? He's the CEO of Frontier, the reason we're all here today." The manager's face froze momentarily. "I believe a gentleman was just inquiring about the Preston Ballroom." He turned to look back at where Marcus stood. Richard followed his gaze and broke into a genuine smile. "Marcus, there you are." He strode across the lobby, hand extended. Hope you haven't been waiting long. As the two CEOs shook hands, the atmosphere in the lobby subtly shifted. The staff watched with dawning realization, the manager's expression morphing from dismissive to mortified. "Just getting checked in," Marcus replied evenly, loud enough for the nearby staff to hear. There was some confusion about the ballroom reservation and my accommodations. Richard frowned. Confusion? I specifically called ahead to ensure everything would be seamless. He turned to the manager. "James, this is Marcus Washington, one of the most brilliant minds in tech and my soon-to-be partner. Anything he needs, you provide immediately." The manager nodded vigorously, his earlier skepticism replaced by eager accommodation. "Absolutely, Mr. Harrington. We'll rectify any issues right away." As the manager hurried off, Richard turned back to Marcus. "Sorry about that. Ready for the big day?" Before Marcus could answer, he caught sight of the receptionist who had first taken his card. She was leaning toward her colleague, whispering behind her hand, both of them glancing in his direction and suppressing smiles. Then, unmistakably, a stifled laugh. Marcus had developed a sixth sense for these moments, the subtle mockery, the disbelief that someone who looked like him could occupy the position he did. Usually, he let it slide, focusing on the bigger picture. But today, on the verge of this historic deal, something shifted inside him. "Give me a moment, Richard," he said quietly, then walked back to the reception desk. The whispering stopped abruptly as he approached. Both receptionists straightened, their faces arranging into professional masks. "Is there something else we can help you with, Mr. Washington?" the first receptionist asked, her voice artificially pleasant. Marcus leaned slightly forward, his voice calm but carrying an intensity that commanded attention. "I couldn't help but notice your reaction just now. I'm curious, what did you find so amusing about me?" The receptionist's face flushed. "Sir, we weren't. I've spent my entire career being underestimated," Marcus continued, his words measured and clear. "Being asked if I'm in the right meeting room, if I'm someone's assistant, if my card is legitimate. So I'm genuinely curious, what was it this time? The surprise that I'm the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company? Or the disbelief that this black card actually belongs to me?" The lobby had grown quiet, conversations fading as others sensed tension unfolding. The receptionist looked around desperately for support, finding none. "I apologize if there was any misunderstanding," she said finally, her voice small. Marcus nodded slowly. "Misunderstandings happen. Judgment without knowledge happens. But laughter? That's a choice." He turned to walk away, but then paused and looked back. "For the record, that card you found so implausible? I've had one for 11 years. Probably longer than you've worked here." As he rejoined Richard, Marcus felt eyes on him from every corner of the lobby. The other CEO gave him a questioning look. "Everything all right?" Richard asked. Marcus took a deep breath, making a decision that would alter the trajectory of two major corporations. "Actually, Richard, we need to talk. Privately." The hotel's executive lounge was empty save for Marcus and Richard, their voices kept low despite the privacy. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below them, unaware of the corporate earthquake about to reshape its skyline. "You want to postpone the signing?" Richard's usually composed demeanor showed cracks of concern. "Marcus, we have shareholders flying in, press releases scheduled, market analysts waiting. What happened downstairs, I agree it was unprofessional. But it's not about what happened downstairs," Marcus interrupted, though they both knew it was. "Not entirely, anyway." Marcus paced the length of the window, gathering his thoughts. The truth was, the incident in the lobby had merely crystallized doubts that had been forming for weeks. He stopped and faced Richard directly. "When we first discussed this merger, you talked about shared vision, about how Pinnacle valued Frontier's company culture and innovation approach. You said we would be partners." Richard nodded emphatically. "And I meant it. Your leadership will be crucial as we integrate. Yet your team has systematically sidelined my executive staff in every integration planning session," Marcus continued. "My chief diversity officer was excluded from HR restructuring meetings. My lead engineers, most of whom are women and people of color, have been told they'll need to reapply for equivalent positions." Richard's expression tightened. Those are standard acquisition procedures, Marcus. Nothing personal. That's just it, Marcus replied. It's never personal until it is. What happened downstairs? That wasn't about my card. It was about who they thought I was or wasn't based on how I look. He moved to the table where his tablet lay, opening the contract document they were scheduled to sign in less than 2 hours. And reading between the lines of this agreement, I'm starting to see the same pattern. Frontier's name gradually phased out, my role transitioning to advisory within 18 months. Our headquarters in Chicago, where we created hundreds of jobs in underserved communities, being downsized in favor of your Silicon Valley campus. Richard's silence was confirmation enough. Marcus continued, his voice steady. I built Frontier not just to create technology, but to create opportunity for brilliant minds that didn't fit the traditional tech profile. People from neighborhoods like mine, who never saw themselves reflected in corporate America. That mission matters to me more than money. Marcus, Richard finally spoke, choosing his words carefully. The business landscape doesn't always have room for idealism. Pinnacle is offering your investors a premium. Your personal stake alone is worth over $400 million in this deal. For a moment, Marcus thought about what that money could mean: generational wealth, philanthropy opportunities, freedom from the constant pressure of running a public company. Then he thought about the faces of his team, the communities they'd impacted, the message this merger would send if Frontier's vision was erased. His phone buzzed with a text from Elijah. In the lobby, staff falling over themselves to apologize. What's going on? Marcus looked up at Richard. I want to show you something. He pulled up a video on his tablet, a recording of Frontier's last company all-hands meeting. On screen, employees from every background shared stories of innovation, of barriers overcome, of lives changed through their work. This is what I'm selling, Richard. Not just patents and market share, but this culture, this purpose. If Pinnacle can't value that, truly value it, not just tolerate it until we're absorbed in $2.8 billion is enough. No amount would be. Richard studied Marcus with new understanding. What exactly are you saying? Marcus straightened, decision made. I'm saying the deal as structured doesn't work for me. Either we renegotiate with binding commitments to preserve Frontier's culture and mission, or I walk away. Richard's expression hardened. Those terms weren't what we agreed to in principle. The board won't accept major changes at this stage. Then they don't get Frontier, Marcus replied simply. My board trusts my judgment. They know our value goes beyond balance sheets. The tension between them stretched like a taut wire. Finally, Richard stood. Let me make some calls. The signing ceremony is in 90 minutes. As Richard stepped away, Marcus gazed out at the city again. The weight of his decision pressed on him the shareholders who might be angry, the market analysts who would question his business sense, the personal fortune he was potentially walking away from. But in his mind, he saw his mother's face, heard her words from this morning. Remember who you are and where you came from. He knew exactly who he was, and he knew what he had to do. The Preston ballroom of the Grand Royal Hotel had been transformed for the occasion. A stage adorned with both companies' logos dominated one end. Rows of chairs for witnesses and press lined up before it. A long signing table draped in blue sat center stage. Contracts laid out with elegant fountain pens beside them. Champagne waited in silver buckets, and photographers tested their equipment, ready to capture the historic moment. Marcus stood at the back of the room, watching as executives and invited guests filed in. Richard hadn't returned from his calls, and the scheduled signing was now just 30 minutes away. Elijah approached, concern evident in his eyes. Marcus, what's happening? The Pinnacle team is huddled in a corner, looking like they've seen a ghost, and Richard's been locked in a call for the past hour. Before Marcus could respond, the hotel manager, now excessively solicitous, hurried over. Mr. Washington, is everything to your satisfaction? Can I get you anything at all? Everything looks fine, Marcus replied coolly. Though I'm curious, did you personally oversee these arrangements when Pinnacle made them? The manager nodded eagerly. Of course, sir. For an event of this magnitude, I handle everything personally. Interesting, Marcus said. So you knew the name Frontier Technologies was part of today's event. You knew the CEO's name was Marcus Washington. The manager's expression froze. There are many details to track, sir. Many details, Marcus repeated softly. Like whether a black man could possibly be the CEO selling his company for billions, rather than someone who stole a credit card? Before the manager could stammer through a response, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Richard had returned, accompanied by several serious-looking men and women in business attire Pinnacle's board members who had flown in for the signing. Richard spotted Marcus and made his way over, his expression unreadable. My board would like to speak with you. Privately. Marcus nodded to Elijah, who squeezed his shoulder in silent support before stepping away. He followed Richard to a side room where the board members waited, their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern. A woman stepped forward, Eleanor Mercer, chairperson of Pinnacle's board. Mr. Washington, Richard has shared your concerns about the integration plan. Marcus met her gaze steadily. My concerns are fundamental to Frontier's value proposition. If Pinnacle doesn't understand that, perhaps we're not the right partners. Another board member, an older man with steel-rimmed glasses, spoke up. You're willing to walk away from $2.8 billion over what amounts to cultural differences? That seems rather emotional for a business decision. On the contrary, Marcus replied, Frontier's valuation is based largely on our ability to attract and retain diverse talent that our competitors cannot. Our innovation edge comes directly from perspectives that traditional tech culture often excludes. Dismantling that is not just morally questionable, it's bad business. He turned to face the entire group. What happened in the lobby earlier wasn't an isolated incident. It's emblematic of the blind spots I fear Pinnacle would bring to this merger. If your staff can't recognize the CEO of a company you're acquiring for billions, what else are you missing? The room fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. Eleanor and Richard exchanged glances. What would addressing your concerns entail, specifically? Eleanor finally asked. Marcus had come prepared. He opened his tablet and projected a document onto the wall screen, a modified version of the merger agreement with key changes highlighted. Retention of Frontier's executive team for a minimum of 3 years. Expansion, not contraction, of our Chicago headquarters. Binding diversity targets for the combined entity. And most importantly, equal representation on the integration committee with veto power over decisions that would undermine our culture. The board members studied the document, murmuring among themselves. Marcus watched their reactions, surprise, reluctance, consideration. Richard stepped forward. These are substantial changes, Marcus. The valuation was based on certain synergies and cost savings that these terms would impact. Then adjust the valuation, Marcus replied simply, or walk away. Frontier will be fine either way. The bold statement hung in the air. Everyone in the room knew it wasn't entirely true. Frontier would face challenges and scrutiny if this deal fell through at the 11th hour. But they also recognized the resolve in Marcus's voice. Eleanor cleared her throat. Could you give us the room for a few minutes, Mr. Washington? Marcus nodded and stepped outside, where Elijah was waiting. Well, his CFO asked anxiously. Now we wait, Marcus said, his calm exterior masking the storm within. The next few minutes would determine not just his company's fate, but a significant piece of his legacy. Inside the room, voices rose and fell. Once, laughter erupted, then was quickly silenced. Outside in the ballroom, guests continued to arrive, unaware of the drama unfolding behind closed doors. Finally, the door opened. Richard emerged alone, his expression somber. The board has reached a decision, he said. The atmosphere in the Preston ballroom had shifted from anticipation to confusion. The scheduled signing time had come and gone. Guests checked their watches and whispered speculations. On stage, the contract pages remained untouched, the champagne unchilled. At precisely 45 minutes past the original start time, Marcus Washington and Richard Harrington appeared together at the entrance. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the two CEOs. Their expressions gave nothing away as they made their way to the stage. Richard reached the microphone first. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, members of the press, thank you for your patience today. As you know, we gathered to witness the joining of two innovative companies into what would have been one of the largest tech entities in America. The word would have been sent a ripple through the crowd. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing the moment. However, Richard continued, after extensive discussions, we had determined that at this time, Pinnacle Industries and Frontier Technologies will not be moving forward with the planned merger. The announcement landed like a thunderclap. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Journalists frantically typed on their phones, breaking the news in real time. Pinnacle board members sat stone-faced in the front row, while Frontier executives exchanged glances of surprise and uncertainty. Richard stepped back, gesturing for Marcus to take the microphone. As Marcus moved forward, he caught sight of the hotel manager and the reception staff standing at the back of the room, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning horror as they began to understand their role in what had transpired. "Good afternoon," Marcus began, his voice steady and clear. The decision not to proceed with this merger was not made lightly. Both Frontier Technologies and Pinnacle Industries are committed to creating value, but we've come to recognize that we measure that value in fundamentally different ways. He paused, surveying the room. At Frontier, we believe that innovation doesn't come from uniformity, but from diversity of thought, experience, and background. Our success has been built on creating spaces where voices that are often marginalized in tech can be heard and amplified. Marcus continued, his words measured but powerful. Earlier today, I experienced a reminder of why our mission matters. In this very hotel, I was questioned, doubted, and ultimately mocked not because of my credentials, which were impeccable, but because certain staff members couldn't reconcile my appearance with my position. A hush fell over the room as the implications became clear. The journalists typing grew more furious. To be clear, this incident alone didn't derail a $2.8 billion deal, Marcus clarified. But it illuminated concerns I'd already been grappling with about whether Frontier's culture and values would truly be preserved post-merger. When I raised these concerns with Pinnacle's leadership, we couldn't reach an agreement that satisfied both parties. Richard stepped forward again, joining Marcus at the microphone. I want to state publicly that Pinnacle Industries respects Mr. Washington and Frontier Technologies. While we're disappointed not to move forward together, we acknowledge the importance of company culture and mission alignment in any successful merger. Marcus nodded in appreciation of Richard's diplomatic statement, then addressed the room once more. To our Frontier employees watching this live stream, I want to assure you, our journey continues. Our mission remains, and our commitment to building technology that reflects and serves all people is stronger than ever. The room erupted with questions from journalists, but Marcus held up a hand. One final note. To the management of the Grand Royal Hotel, the incident I experienced today reflects a broader pattern that many successful people of color face daily. I hope this serves as a catalyst for reflection and change within your organization. With that, Marcus stepped away from the microphone. The ballroom dissolved into chaos as reporters rushed forward. The planned orderly ceremony now transformed into a breaking news frenzy. As Marcus made his way through the crowd, hotel staff scrambled to clear a path. The manager approached, perspiration visible on his brow. "Mr. Washington, please accept our deepest apologies for any misunderstanding. If there's anything we can do..." "There is," Marcus interrupted calmly. "Use this as a learning opportunity. Train your staff to recognize that excellence and achievement come in all colors. That's all I ask." Before the manager could respond, Elijah appeared at Marcus's side, phone in hand. "Marcus, you need to see this. The news is already out in our stock." "Is dropping?" Marcus asked, prepared for the market's immediate reaction. Elijah shook his head, eyes wide. "Up. It's up 12% and climbing. The market is calling your decision a bold defense of corporate values and a watershed moment for culture-driven leadership." As they pushed through to the exit, Marcus glanced back once at the ballroom, at the contracts never signed, the champagne never poured, the historic photo never taken. For a moment, doubt flickered. Had he made the right choice? Had personal pride influenced a decision that affected thousands of employees and investors? Then his phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Saw the news. Your father would be so proud. You stood tall." And in that moment, Marcus knew some principles were worth more than $2.8 billion. Some examples needed to be set, regardless of the cost. And sometimes the most powerful statement a leader could make was simply walking away. By nightfall, hashtag Frontier Stands and hashtag Blacks Don't Matter were trending nationwide. Clips of Marcus's statement had gone viral, spliced alongside statistics about the dismal representation of black executives in Fortune 500 companies. Business channels ran special segments analyzing the collapsed deal, with experts divided on whether Marcus's decision was visionary leadership or costly miscalculation. In his hotel suite, relocated to a competing establishment across town, Marcus sat surrounded by his core team, managing the fallout. "Our investors are split," Elijah reported, scrolling through messages on his tablet. "The venture firms are nervous, but holding. Individual shareholders are overwhelmingly supportive. Many are actually increasing their positions." Maya Chun, Frontier's chief communications officer, looked up from her laptop. "We received partnership inquiries from 3 major companies in the last hour alone. They're specifically citing our cultural integrity as what attracts them." Marcus nodded, taking it all in. "And our employees?" "That's the most interesting part," said Darius Williams, Frontier's chief people officer. "Internal message boards are on fire in a good way. People are proud, Marcus. Really proud. I've got dozens of emails from staff saying today made them certain they've chosen the right company." As the team continued their updates, Marcus's phone rang an unknown number. Normally he would let it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. Marcus Washington speaking. "Mr. Washington." The voice was unfamiliar, authoritative. "This is Lenora Blake, CEO of Horizon Global." Marcus straightened. Horizon Global was one of Pinnacle's chief competitors, larger, more established, and known for its progressive corporate policies. "Ms. Blake, this is unexpected." "Not as unexpected as your press conference today," she replied, a note of admiration in her voice. "I'll be direct, Mr. Washington. What happened with Pinnacle is their loss, and potentially our gain. I'd like to discuss a strategic partnership, one that preserves Frontier's identity and mission, while providing the resources to scale." Marcus caught Elijah's eye, signaling him to stay close. "I'm listening." "My board has authorized me to open discussions at a $3.2 billion valuation with guaranteed autonomy for your Chicago headquarters and retention of your executive team." The room fell silent as those nearby realized what they were overhearing. "That's a generous offer," Marcus replied carefully. "But as today demonstrated, valuation isn't my only concern." "I understand completely," Lenora said, "which is why I'd like you to join our board of directors regardless of whether a deal materializes. Horizon could benefit from your perspective." After arranging a formal meeting for the following week, Marcus ended the call to find his team staring at him in amazement. Did Horizon Global just offer $400 million more than Pinnacle? Elijah asked incredulously. "With better terms," Marcus confirmed, still processing the conversation himself. Maya's phone chimed with a news alert. She scanned it quickly, then looked up with wide eyes. The Grand Royal Hotel just issued a public apology. They announced mandatory diversity training for all staff and a partnership with the National Urban League on Hospitality Industry Inclusion Initiatives. The ripples continued to spread over the following days. A prominent business magazine bumped their planned cover story to feature Marcus instead, under the headline, "The $2.8 billion Principle, When Corporate Culture is Non-Negotiable." 3 major tech companies released their diversity numbers and announced new initiatives to improve representation. Most surprisingly, Richard Harrington called a week later. "The fallout's been significant," he admitted when Marcus took his call. 2 major clients have paused their contracts pending review of our diversity practices. The board is reevaluating priorities." "I'm sorry to hear that," Marcus said sincerely. "That wasn't my intention." "Perhaps it needed to happen," Richard replied thoughtfully. "We've been too comfortable for too long. I'm actually calling to ask if you'd be willing to have your chief diversity officer consult with our team." As the weeks passed, Marcus found himself increasingly invited to spaces where few people who looked like him had been welcomed before exclusive industry roundtables, policy advisory groups, economic forums. At each one, he brought members of his team, ensuring that the doors open to him became pathway for others. Frontier stock eventually stabilized at 20% above its pre-announcement value. The company launched new initiatives in educational technology for underserved communities, funded by the very capital that would have been diluted in the Pinnacle merger. And the receptionist who had laughed at Marcus's black card? She reached out through LinkedIn with a heartfelt apology and asked for career advice, admitting the incident had forced her to confront her own biases. Marcus not only responded but invited her to Frontier's diversity workshop, beginning another small but significant ripple of change. 8 months after the day that became known in business circles simply as the Grand Royal Incident, Marcus Washington stood on a different stage than one at Frontier's expanded Chicago headquarters. Behind him, a ribbon stretched across the entrance to the company's new innovation center, built in the heart of the South Side neighborhood where he had grown up. Before him sat not shareholders or business partners, but students, hundreds of young people from surrounding schools, many from backgrounds similar to his own, all invited to be the first to use the center's resources. When I was your age, Marcus began, standing in this very neighborhood, success seemed like something that happened elsewhere to other people. Technology wasn't created by people who looked like me or came from where I came from. He gestured to the gleaming building behind him. This center exists to change that narrative. Every computer, every 3D printer, every piece of equipment inside is a tool to build your future. And every mentor waiting to work with you is living proof that your dreams are valid. In the front row sat Margaret Washington, now in her 70s, beaming with pride as her son continued to address the eager young faces. Some of you might have heard about what happened last year, how I walked away from a $2.8 billion deal because I wasn't willing to compromise on what matters most. Marcus paused, surveying the crowd. The headlines called it brave. Business schools are now teaching it as a case study. But the truth is much simpler. I just remember who I was and where I came from. He stepped away from the podium, moving closer to the students. That moment in the hotel taught me something profound. Our greatest power lies not in what we achieve, but in what we refuse to compromise. Sometimes, standing your ground creates more value than any deal ever could. The partnership that eventually formed between Frontier and Horizon Global had indeed valued the company at $3.4 billion, $600 million more than the Pinnacle offer. But more importantly, it had preserved Frontier's mission and accelerated its impact. The world will test you, Marcus continued. It will ask you to shrink, to fit expectations, to accept less than you deserve. In those moments, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by others' perception of you. And sometimes, walking away from the wrong opportunity is the only way to make room for the right one. As Marcus cut the ribbon to officially open the center, cameras flashed and applause erupted. Among the crowd were familiar faces Elijah, Maya, and the entire Frontier executive team. But there were new faces too. Richard Harrington, who had since initiated major reforms at Pinnacle. The former hotel receptionist, now enrolled in Frontier's management training program, and dozens of young entrepreneurs who had found inspiration in Marcus's stand. Later, as students explored the new facility, Margaret approached her son, taking his hands in hers. Your father used to say that a man who knows his worth never has to prove it to anyone, she said softly. He would be so proud to see that you didn't just know your worth, you showed an entire industry what true value looks like. Marcus embraced his mother, looking over his shoulder at the vibrant energy filling the center, young minds discovering possibilities, mentors sharing knowledge, futures being reimagined. This was the true resolution of that day at the Grand Royal Hotel. Not the headlines or the increased valuation, or even the industry reforms that followed. But this, a generation of young people who would grow up knowing that their identity was not an obstacle, but a strength. That principles could be more valuable than profits. And that sometimes the most powerful move a person could make was simply to stand firm in their truth.